Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the Bowie City Council meeting for August the 5th. I'd like to ask those that can to stand as we start every meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Are any other agenda additions or amendments?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Can we move item H to new business?
H. Okay, that'll be the new business number C. Okay, done. Citizen participation, have anybody sign up to speak? Okay, as I call your name, if you would come to the podium and identify yourself to the folks at home. Corman, hold. Carmen, okay, I'm sorry, Carmen. Oh, well, okay. I'm sorry, welcome.
Where's the camera?
I'm sorry?
The camera?
Right there.
Oh, God, in front of me? Oh, wow, okay, great. Okay, hello. My name is Dr. Carmen House, and I am a resident of the Bowen Apartments, the Bowen Luxury Apartments, a Live-B/Berman Enterprise company, and I've been living there for 5 years. Recently, I guess I'd say maybe within the last year, 9 months, year, there's been several issues that have occurred within our property. One of the issues is their billing irregularity. Like we have various residents with the water bill. We have residents that might have a 2-bedroom with 2 people. Their water bill fluctuates, or they're being charged maybe $8 or $10, $12 a month, whereas I have a 1-bedroom by myself, 2 dogs, and I'm paying like $50. It's going up like $10, $15 every month. Another thing is with the amenities fees. Some people are being charged a $50 minimum amenities fee. Someone is being charged $5. I'm not being charged anything for an amenities fee. Okay, I've spoken with them on several occasions, and I've been given the runaround. I've been told one thing, been told another thing. She said, the property management said that our rates have increased and that Paylease, the company that prints our bill, is responsible for it, but I got it in writing from them that they're not responsible for it. Another problem that we've had is security. Homeless people have been found living in our stairwell. One of them decides to defecate in our stairwell in a bag. Can everybody see this? In a bag. And we see this as our luxury living apartment. And we have complained about this. The doors don't close all the way. There's easy access to any part of the building through various ways in the garage. Also, some of the residents, here is a photo I caught off of my balcony of one of the residents leaving the garage, deciding to stop, pull over, and urinate. And I just knew a lot of people were going to come out on their balcony, but apparently I was the only one sitting there. Okay. Homeless, another homeless person was sleeping outside. This was 3 weeks ago. The defecation was like March, and that's not the first time. It's happened several times. There was I have several photos here, but this homeless person was sleeping out in front of the pool. We called the police. They came out. One time, someone was sleeping outside in my hallway. When I called the Bowie police, they described they gave me 4 different descriptions, and I said, how many guys are there? And they said 5. All right, and we've spoken with Live-B/Berman, and this problem continues.
Okay. All right, if you can leave that with us, we'll have code enforcement look into it, and make sure you leave your name with somebody over in the.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your comment. Brian Murtaugh.
How you doing, Mr. Rob?
Of the family Murtaugh.
Yeah, it's been a long time. I've actually been living in Bowie since I was 4 years old, okay? And I'll be 62 here soon. And my concern is about the traffic. And I'm here about the all-way stop signs.
Okay.
Okay?
Well, that's on the agenda later on if you want to speak at that time about
whatever
or you can do it now.
To do. whatever you want me to do.
Well, let's see, it's on, well, that's going to be a presentation, so why don't you go ahead and make your comments now.
Okay. Originally, when the streets of Bowie were designed back in 1962, there was a gentleman named Leonard that Levitt gave the contract to design the streets so that they could handle the amount of people that we had in Bel Air at Bowie at that time, okay? Now at that time, they were just building Bel Air Shopping Center, which is where they used to have the town meetings and the liquor store standing up on a wooden crate, right? They had Boswell Field, which is now the Free State Mall, so there wasn't traffic from that. There was no Hilltop Plaza, that was just the Bowie Inn on Archer Hill. Now we have Marketplace Shopping Center with a lot of stores. We have Free State Mall. We have an awful lot of traffic here now. There's more than one car per household, which is how basically it was back in 1962 when these roads were designed. So right now, if you come up Superior Lane trying to pull out onto Stony Brook Drive, it's impossible to pull out on the road. And now with Melford also opening up, there's going to be more and more traffic coming down through there. If they were to put just a three-way stop, it would help slow people down on Bel Air Drive. Speed bumps, in my opinion, just mess up plows, all that kind of stuff. A three-way stop there would definitely help with the congestion, the pollution, all of that kind of thing. I don't know if you all have done a traffic study on that particular intersection, but it's getting worse and worse and worse, where people get backed up all the way down Superior. It doesn't even have to be rush hour there anymore. The only other place in Bowie that I see a need for it is at Ken Hill Drive and Bel Air Drive. That gets pretty busy, especially during rush hour. When the kids are getting out of school, they do have a crossing guard there, but if they had a three-way stop, it would slow people down on Bel Air Drive, and it would also alleviate a little bit of the traffic jams. Now, I passed 4 all-way stops in less than a mile coming here. So I can't see how this 1992 bill was in effect, because you've got one directly out in front of City Hall, and you've got 3 more of them before you get out here by the side of the shopping center. That's less than a mile. There is no traffic on that road. Nothing at all compared to the 2 intersections that I'm talking about. Those are the 2 places that I feel there is a big need, and it's going to do nothing but get worse as Melwood gets built up and all of that.
Okay, well, we appreciate your comments, and we're going to have a presentation tonight on the proposals, the pros and cons of 3- and 4-way stop signs. And I've made a note for the 2 sites that you suggested.
All right, thank you.
Always good to see the Murtaughs.
Hey.
Thank you, sir.
You were over the house when I was a little guy.
All right, next item is Bowie Youth and Family Service Volunteer Awards. Council, you want to go down?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Terrific. So I'd like to say a few words about each of our honorees, and then we'll call their names individually to receive their awards. Should I come around? Yeah. Great. Thank you. So I'd like to extend our sincere gratitude on behalf of the city for all of the volunteers that spent countless hours making a difference in the lives of the youth that we serve. First, I'd like to recognize the Honorable Diane Palangan. Diane has performed many volunteer roles for Bowie Youth and Family Services and our youth in the last few years. She has helped with mock interviews and resume assistance in our job fairs. She's been a mentor for our Dream It Be It program, and she is also a current volunteer in our teen mentoring program at Bowie High School. Helen Van Pelt, who couldn't be here tonight, is a recent past president of Seroptimist International of Bowie and Anne Arundel counties, or Prince George's and Anne Arundel counties. And she introduced Dream It Be It to Bowie Youth and Family Services, which is a program which provides mentoring and career support for teen girls. And the program provides participants with weekly meetings with mentors and other supports. Helen has also helped with our annual job fair and resume writing and interview skills as well. Lynn Hansford has been a mentor and coordinator for Dream It Be It since its inception of the program in 2017, and she is the current president of Seroptimist International of Prince George's and Anne Arundel counties. She's served as one of our Dream It Be It mentors, and she's volunteered to help every single year with our youth job fair. Carrie Dyke has shared her considerable skills as a local small business owner in Bowie with our Dream It Be It kids, and she's also helped applicants develop resume writing and interview skills with our job fairs each year. Gina Barber is the assistant manager of a local bank, which has been very helpful for some of our kids who want to learn about running a business and other kinds of business skills. She has been also a mentor for our Dream It Be It students, and she's volunteered with our young adult job fair. Karen Parker is a dedicated volunteer for the city of Bowie, so not only for our programs, but for others. She's worked tirelessly providing interview help and other career building skills for disconnected youth, both with Bowie High School, with our programs, and with the county. She's spearheaded the Bowie High School senior class job fair since 2016, even after her own children graduated from Bowie High School. Thank you for your volunteerism and your advocacy for our young people. And last but not least, we want to thank the Seroptimist International organization for all they've done for our kids, all our mentoring, financial help, time, support with curriculum and other things. Thank you, thank you. So we want to extend our gratitude to all of you as you come forward. Rhonda, if you could come up. Rhonda Simon is our prevention coordinator who has been working with all of these programs. So I'm going to ask Rhonda to pass out the awards as I read names. And once we read your names, if you could stay up here for a little while so that we can get pictures with the council and mayor. And again, we extend our gratitude, our deep gratitude for everything you do every day. All right. Diane Langen, please.
Nice to get an award for something you enjoy doing so much.
We do. Karen. Oh. I'll take it.
Okay. So it's Tony Parker and Karen.
So Karen Parker couldn't be here tonight, but her husband, Mr. Tony Parker, will be accepting the award on her behalf. Lynn Hansford. Carrie Dyke.
Thank you very much. And give me more. You will when I retire.
Gina Barber. And for the Seroptimist International organization,
So if Karen and Kathy Woods can come up as part of the Seroptimist International organization that works with our teen, our young teen girls. So we appreciate this. kind of squeeze together so we can.
Well, we have the awardees coming through.
Okay.
Only important piece.
And we have boxes right next to the desk there for all the awards, so please don't leave without that.
City manager report.
Mr. Mayor, and the city staff is busy preparing goals and work plans for its employees for this fiscal year, and so that we can have be a more efficient organization. That's all I have to say. Thank you, sir.
Okay. All right, council, you got consent agenda A through G. Do I have a motion? Second? Second by Mr. Wolfley. All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Old business charter amendment C219. Who's going to present that?
Good evening. Lindsay Rader, Funkin Bolton, Bond Counsel to the City. The purpose of the Charter Amendment Resolution is really to provide the city with flexibility in the way it approves, authorizes, or documents general obligation borrowings. The flexibility given to the council and the city under the Charter Amendment Resolution is not mandated. For any particular issue, you don't have to use it, but it's to give you that flexibility. And some of the prime examples of the flexibility provided by the Charter Amendment Resolution is for a public sale at competitive bid. It used to be, when I started in the practice over 30 years ago, that bids were received on a certain date and time after the full-blown notice of sale had been published in a paper, and representatives of the underwriting firms would literally come into bond counsel's office to a conference room and deliver their bids by hand. And all of the underwriting firms subscribed to clipping services, which, culled notices of sale from papers throughout America and provided those to the underwriting firms. These days, where the underwriting firms are really looking to find the notices of sale is through electronic dissemination. So one of the things this Charter Amendment Resolution does, if the city is issuing general obligation debt by public sale at competitive bid, you can choose not to publish your notice of sale, or you could choose to publish just a summary notice of sale. In each case, you'll make that determination on an issue-by-issue basis. Another example of the flexibility is that the ordinance now provides that certain details relating to a general obligation borrowing must be determined by ordinance, but other details may be determined by resolution. And again, on an issue-by-issue basis, the city will decide whether it first wants to do a parameters ordinance and then fix or provide for details by resolution, or if you want to deal with all of the details by ordinance. And one of the reasons for providing that flexibility, you could be thinking that you're going to issue bonds for a wide range of projects, and you authorize those projects by ordinance, and then as we're getting closer to the time that the city's actually going to issue that general obligation debt, projects may have been delayed, or there's a reason you want to issue a smaller amount of bonds at a particular time. You can determine the method of sale under this Charter Amendment Resolution by resolution rather than by ordinance. And a resolution can be introduced and adopted in a single session, whereas with an ordinance, you introduce it at one session, you pass it at another session, and then there's a period of time before the ordinance becomes effective. So again, it's really to provide the city with flexibility. You can choose to avail yourselves of it, or you can choose not to. On any particular issue, sorry.
Do you have comments, Mr.
Mr. Mayor, it's our recommendation that the city amend Section 58 of Charter to confirm methods for sale by which general obligation debt may be sold, to remove the current requirement that the general obligation debt is sold at public sale after solicitation of competitive bids, the full notice of the sale be published in a newspaper circulating in the county or among the investments of the financial community, and provide flexibility for the method by which general obligation debt is authorized by the council, and flexibility regarding how notices of the sale are disseminated. Although under the current schedule, the charter amendment will not be effective in time to be relied upon for the proposed general obligation bond issue for the new ice arena, such amendments will give the city flexibility in the future to obligate the borrowing. Thank you.
Thank you. May we sign a seat?
No, sir.
Public hearing. Any questions of staff? Okay, you have a request to charter amendment CAR 219. Have a motion?
I move for the passing of Charter Amendment CAR 2-19.
Second.
Moved and second. Any question on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. All right, item A on the new business city transportation list. Thank you, ma'am.
Go.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I'm Joe Meinert, the City of Bowie Planning Director. I'm here to present the transportation priority list item this evening. As council is aware, the transportation process has 4 steps to it. The project planning step is the first step. Design and engineering is a separate, discrete step. Right-of-way acquisition is the 3rd step. And then construction funding is the 4th step. On most projects, these are separate, discrete steps, and usually they're competitive in terms of trying to obtain funding from either the state or the county agencies that are in the having the jurisdiction over the roads. What we provided to you tonight is a packet of information, including the letters that were sent last September to the State Secretary of Department of Transportation and to the county executive, identifying the city's priorities for state and county roads. I'd like to just point out that the priorities again this year are unchanged from last year. Your highest priority is Maryland Route 197 to get that project completed through design and constructed as soon as possible. It's currently listed as number 4 on the County Council's priority list. Maryland 450 is the 2nd priority. That project is currently on hold with the State Highway Administration. And then thirdly, the City Council has always supported Church Road as the highest priority for county roadways. So those priorities are unchanged, and we just wanted to highlight those to the council this evening. I do have some additional information which is in the memo concerning the projects that appear in the state's Consolidated Transportation Program, and you can see the brief summary of each of those. Essentially, the Maryland 197 project is moving through re-engineering. It's hopefully going to go to a public meeting in 2020 at about 30% of design. With respect to recommendations, we've made recommendations in past letters about Maryland 197, Maryland 450. Also, we've included in the letter recommendations about Route 301, Route 3. Also looking at public transit in the Route 50 corridor, at possible new interchange at US 50 and Maryland 193, which is also on the county's priority list as number 10. And also looking into the possibility of constructing a new roadway from Maryland Route 197 near Bowie State University with Maryland Route 3, connecting with Maryland Route 3 in Crofton. That's a long-range project. And a couple of other projects include the Hall Road sidewalk extension down to Maryland 214, as well as the Maryland Route 197 North landscaping retrofit, which had a conceptual design approved many years ago. In terms of county transportation priorities or projects in the capital improvements program, the county park and planning is actually working on a project adjacent to the WB&A trail called the Horsepen Park. That's at the old pumping station up near the racetrack. That project is partially complete. Also, there's a section of the Heritage Trail, which Park and Planning is doing behind Bowie State University on the state DNR property connecting up to the Spur Trail. So those are active projects in the county CIP. Also, the county is interested in pursuing replacement of the bridge at Chestnut Avenue, just south of Old Town Bowie, and the replacement of Governor Bridge Road. And you'll recall that there were meetings held last year on various alternatives to the replacement of the bridge over the Patuxent River on Governor Bridge Road. Also, the county is helping to fund some of the sidewalk activities on Hall Road that I mentioned earlier. They're a partner in that project with the city. There is a CIP project for Church Road, but unfortunately, year after year, the county does not put any funding in that. So you have a page in the capital program which is unfunded. Also, the county continues to fund minor improvements along Route 301, south of Maryland 214. And finally, the project involving the WB&A Trail, there will be a bridge constructed across the Patuxent River into Anne Arundel County very soon. So the city has in the past recommended, as I said, Church Road as its highest priority from Leland Road all the way up to Maryland 450. Council has indicated an interest in moving forward with improvements to Mitchellville Road from US 301 up to Mount Oak Road, and I'm told that there is a project in the county's capital program, not a specific page for it, but that Mitchellville Road has been considered by the county, but there's not enough money to actually spend on design plans at this time. There's just a shortfall in funding. The county is moving forward with item 3 there on the list, funding for Racetrack Road, and that project had a public meeting last year, and it's in the middle of the design phase. That's expected to take about another year or so to complete design, and then the county will move into the construction phase. And that's between Idlewild Drive and Clearfield with an emphasis on safety and traffic calming solutions. And then finally, for the road projects for the county, the city had recommended adding Old Stage Road as a construction project. And that's important in that the eastern side of Fairwood, east of Church Road, has extended Old Stage Road to connect into that subdivision. So now you have a continuous route through the Old Stage community down through Fairwood, and there's substandard sections of that road which create safety issues. Council has also recommended in the past a number of trail projects spurring off of the Bowie Heritage Trail, which are outside of the city, so we would be looking to Park and Planning to help to fund some of those improvements, including an underpass of Maryland 197 up at the Bowie Mark Station at Bowie State University. And so we're recommending to Park and Planning to assist with that. Regarding Old Town Bowie, there has been a recommendation every year to have the county examine the county roads that serve Old Town Bowie, and that would include Old Laurel Bowie Road, Chestnut Avenue, and Duckatown Road for sidewalk retrofits. And so that's another recommendation that we would reiterate in this year's letter. Also looking at Park and Planning to help with some of the trail construction outside the city. In the Church Road area, there's land that was set aside for the former A44 roadway, and it's now owned by Park and Planning and the county, and we believe through our trails planning that this would be a really good opportunity to partner with Park and Planning and provide an off-road trail system in that section of the area. Also related to trails is a connection across Maryland 214 in the vicinity of Hall Road, and this would tie into the trail system planning that we're doing with the update of the Bowie Trails Plan, and also with those sidewalk improvements along Hall Road that I previously mentioned. Council has also made recommendations about transit serving the city, in particular giving a priority to US 50 as a priority transit corridor for future planning. Also looking at ways to bring the county's bus system, which is called The Bus, to come out and serve various parts of the city, including a downtown circulator route serving the Bowie Town Center, including Covington and Melford. And that would conclude the summary of the recommendations that were in the letters last year. We would recommend again that council forward to the state the list of state recommended priorities, and then also to the county executive recommendations about the county's road and transit system. And that would conclude the staff presentation.
Thanks, sir. Do we have any sign up to speak? As I call your name, if you would come to the podium and identify yourself for the folks at home. Mr. Brady, Dennis Brady, welcome, sir.
Council, thank you for this opportunity to speak. But let me digress for just a minute, since your next item with regard to three-way stops is a briefing, not a public session. Real quickly, be careful with changing that. Anytime you modify, especially if you don't meet warrants, you open the city and the citizens up to legal liability. And I'd also suggest you be creative and think outside the box. Look at traffic circles. You know, Melford is going to generate traffic going down Bel Air Drive, and you have several opportunities along that whole length to put some nice circles. And they would be a lot better than all-way stops, and you could landscape them, and you could add to the look of the community rather than have the stop lines and the stop signs be there. So be creative and think out of the box. Kathy also, my wife, went to Northern Virginia, and she took a photo of incomplete speed humps in, I think it was Fairfax. And she showed them to me, and she couldn't figure out why they weren't all the way across the road. And the spacing of the two gaps, one in each drive lane in the two-way street, coincided with the wider width of the wheelbase for emergency vehicles. So the emergency vehicles, because you remember when we've had this discussion in the past, Fred, the fire and rescue come and complain about speed humps and bumps that slows them down from responding. But if you put gaps in the speed humps that are appropriate for emergency vehicles, they can continue down the road, and everyone else has to at least have one side, right or left, go over the speed bump that'll slow them down. Now to transportation priorities. Disappointed when I left the council 4 years ago, there was an expectation that Maryland 197 between 450 and Kent Hill Drive would be improved during FY19, so kind of disappointed that went away. More importantly, I'm here to speak about Church Road. I'm glad to see it's once again on the priority. We've seen a lot of development in the area, and Mr. Minor at Councilman Franklin's meeting last week talked about the pipeline. There's a lot more development coming in that area along Church Road. And I know when I first got on the council 25 years ago, there was a road club funded through developers, and I think all that money went to the improvement of Church Road and Mount Oak. So there's no money, but it needs to be improved. And now the city is going to join the problem by building the ice arena on Church Road. So I think the conditions, and especially with the young man just being killed, the pedestrian killed, if you go back to the letter, Mr. Minor references a 2006 reference on Church Road improvements. 2006, there was a young man, 13-year-old, killed in an auto accident on that curvy S part of the Church Road there by Church Park. And at that time, I kind of rattled the chains and created a little brouhaha, if you will, and got then County Councilman Peters to start a study of it. And that's what resulted in, I think there's 4 parts of Church Road to be improved, and the one that they did was the realignment of the intersection of Church Road and Mount Hope, which was an improvement. It looks a lot better, but now we need to go and finish it from there up to 450. It needs to be done, and now that we're going to contribute to the problem, the city is going to contribute to the problem, I think it behooves you to step up the pressure on the county to get this funded. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your comments. That's all the people who have signed up to speak. Council, questions of staff?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I got a couple things. Right now, the racetrack road redesign is currently in the planning phase. Do we have any sense at all, Mr. Minor, to when that start date for that project might actually be?
I think the county does have every intention of funding the construction once the design is finished. We've been told the design is underway now, and it's going to be completed in about a year to a year and a half. So you're looking at probably 2 years out to, if everything proceeds orderly, for the county to go out for bid for advertising the project, and then if the funding is there to construct it, probably about 2 years from now at the earliest.
So potentially 4 years. Something in the pit of my stomach tells me that it's possible that this project is simply intended to allow the county to say that they've studied it. And I'm very skeptical. Is there anything that we could be doing to ensure, or encourage our friends at the county to make sure that this remains a priority beyond this transportation letter tonight? Do you have any advice on that?
Well, Councilman, we have had conversations with the project staff, and we know that the project is proceeding. They did hold a meeting last year and collected a lot of good information, including some recommendations from our Trails group. And we're told that those improvements are going to be included, those recommendations will be included in the design as they're designing it. So that's the best answer that I can give you, is that I know that it's an active project. The county is actually spending money with consultants and working on the design.
Okay. Moving on from the county real quick, do we have any idea whatsoever, when and if we'll ever see a 197 or 450 expansion?
Well, Route 197 is in the similar status as the Racetrack Road. It's under design. There's a fair amount of rethinking the project. The State Highway Administration and MDOT is now going through the process of what they call practical design. They're looking at every project that they have on the books, no matter where it is in the system, and trying to figure out whether the original needs and purpose of the project are being met. So they had to take a step back on the 197 design, and my understanding is they're working towards a 30% plan that they want to bring out to the community and have a community meeting in early 2020. So that project should move forward after that, after the practical design is completed.
Okay. We were at a transportation roundtable not long ago with our congressman and with several state and other local elected leaders. And for the first time in 3 years on the city council, I had a congressman and a House of Delegate member both tell me the same thing, which is that federal and state highway dollars are going to be running perpetually low indefinitely, partly because the state and federal gas taxes just aren't bringing in the revenue they used to as car fuel efficiency has improved. But a federal and state lawmaker both told a room of elected officials that we need to start planning to pick up the slack where we've been relying more on federal and state entities to fund some of these projects. In your view, is there truth to that? Is that something that we need to actively start thinking about and planning for?
I don't have a solution, but I think that what you're pointing out is clearly the situation. And that's why the state, a couple years back, started this practical design review, because they realize that they're really constrained financially. They're not able to do all the projects that they wish they could do. And so they're trying to isolate the projects that meet the purpose and need and have a priority. And I think that's what we can do with Maryland 197, is to try to encourage that project to move along, because it does address a lot of the issues that I think the original project was set out to do. So it's clear that there is There's not an unlimited supply of funding for these projects, but I think the idea is to make sure that we advance projects that are reasonable and that are within the state's ability to fund them.
Does staff have any opinions or thoughts or recommendations on how we could be more effectively lobbying the county and state for our priorities? I sometimes feel like may as well just be mailing this wish list to Santa. And I'm feeling a little bit like the protagonist in Waiting for Godot.
Well, that's a good point, Councilman Esteve. Both letters to the state and the county are always provided as a tool for the council to continue or conduct its lobbying of elected officials, and it's really incumbent on each individual council member to try to carry that ball and try to make a breakthrough or achieve a breakthrough however you're able to do it. But that's why we provide the list, that's why we put it out there in public, and then it's written and you all have copies at your disposal to do that kind of lobbying.
Okay. Fair enough. Would it be possible for us to get a representative from State Highway to give us a public presentation in the coming months to answer some of our questions about ongoing and upcoming projects?
We could invite the state. Typically, the state is the state Secretary of Transportation and some of the other higher up people in the state transit agencies go around and do what they call a road show. They go from county to county. They review their capital programs with the local leaders. Typically, it's a public session, and it's down at the county administration building, so you're certainly welcome to participate in that, and some elected officials from other municipalities do. But we could certainly extend an offer for them to come out or send some of their people down to give the council a briefing or an overview on where things stand.
I'd really appreciate that if staff could help facilitate that. We're not in a huge rush. I had a constituent the other day tell me that she's been lobbying for a 197 expansion longer than I've probably been alive. So I'm sure that we're not in a huge hurry. But yeah, anything we can do to kind of make sure our state and county lawmakers know that we're anxious to see some of these projects move beyond the discussion phase would be really nice. I appreciate your help, Joe.
Any other questions? Mr. Wolfner?
Good evening. I have several questions for you here. The first one is on trails. We have a trail that I think it's a WB&A trail that dead ends at the county line, and there is I think a need for some sort of a bridge, and I think the county is engaged with Arundel. Have you heard any status on what might be happening with that particular project?
Councilman, I don't know the details, but I did have a conversation with the county's person who is working on the bridge project, and they are waiting for Anne Arundel County at this point. It's a joint project, but Anne Arundel County has a major stake in it, and their action has been delayed, is from what I understand.
Okay. The next question is a fan favorite for me and a number of my constituents, which is traffic light at Sylvan. I understand that from our earlier conversations earlier in the year that there was movement moving forward with a traffic light at that intersection. Do you know what the status is vis-a-vis shortages of materials or the like?
Councilman, one thing the state officials told us was that the Sylvan Drive traffic signal is a separate effort, and it's not at all related to the Forest Drive project.
Understood. Yeah.
So even though the Forest Drive project has been slightly delayed, we were told that the signalization of Sylvan was probably going to happen this fall. And so I don't know any more information than that, but it's something I could check on.
Okay. And the rebid for the work at Forest Drive, do we know how that's going?
I don't have any more information since the last time we spoke.
Okay, thank you. Your mention earlier about the 197 redesign, the practical design approach, the 30% plan for 2020. Did they start from scratch on that? Because we were further along than 20%, but we were further along than 30%, I think, for the design in that.
Well, there have not been any meetings or anything like when the project was really moving for staff to attend, but I think that they had to go back quite a bit because of the utility impacts. There's just a lot of utilities that run through the corridor, and they, with the previous project, weren't able to really find a solution to that. So I don't know that they went all the way back to square one, but I know there was a fair amount of re-examining the project. So that's all I can say.
Because I thought we were somewhere near like 80% or something on that before.
I don't think it was that far. It might have been a little more than 40%.
Okay. Do we know when in 2020 the expectation would be we would have some opportunity for citizen input?
I believe it's going to be in the springtime.
Spring, thank you. Governor Bridge Road and Governor Bridge, anything new there?
The state held the meeting. They looked at various alternatives with the community. Again, there's input required from Arundel County, and I think right now that's the sticking point, is that they haven't really received recommendations from Arundel County, so things are on hold at this time.
Okay. And the Route 3-301, there was mention made in the packet about the there were going to be some interim improvements to the surface, and in the short term it wasn't going to be a complete rework, but in that area, can you briefly describe what that looks like and what the prognosis is for some sort of an improvement in the near future?
Yes, this has been a project that's been talked about for a few years now with District 3, the local state highway office, and it's to try to improve the congestion that occurs around the Bowie Gateway Center at Harbor Way down to Route 197. Right now there's sort of a funneling of the traffic and a bottleneck that occurs there going southbound. And the State Highway Administration has looked at a couple of different solutions over the years, but the most recent communication was that they're going to do some restriping to achieve a third through lane through that area, and they hope to have that done by the end of this calendar year.
And the area that's affected is from 50 north on 3 that would have restriped to 3 lanes?
No, it's the opposite direction, 50 going south, so it'd be in front of the Gateway Center.
Oh yes, okay. All right. And the other question I have for you, the roadshow timing that you were speaking to, do you know what the timing is for the county?
I don't have the date yet, but I think it's usually in November.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Can you check into that and let us all know, because I think that would be a really good time. Really good show, I'm sure.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Dr. Trout.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the report, Mr. Minor. Couple of questions. Regarding 301, on page 2, it talks about the 301, item number 2, upgrading 301 from Excalibur to Leland Road. Now, I thought I just heard you saying something about them restriping 301, just as you got from 3 going south. When you cross 50, it becomes 301. They're talking about adding a restriping to add third lanes. I'm kind of curious on that, because I also heard earlier, at least I think I heard, a statement to the fact that they were asking us, telling us, that this is at the state level, that they really have limited funds, and as a result, they are saying that we should be more involved in the preparation or spending. Are they asking us to spend city dollars on state road? That's the gist of my question with regard to the remark that I heard earlier.
I've not heard that.
Okay, because it sounded like when I thought you were talking to Councilman Esteve, they were saying something about us being more proactive, or looked like they were asking us for assistance as far as financial assistance.
That's what Councilman Esteve pointed out. I don't know anything about that.
Oh, okay. Because I'm just trying to figure out why would we be liable? Why would we want to put city dollars in a state coffer? But getting back to 301, we've got some projects that are coming up on 301. A couple of projects. You got South Lake and you also have Mill Branch. In both those cases, my understanding is that the developers have been asked to do some widening on 301. I know specifically with South Lake because I asked them for covenants to do an additional lane going northbound on 301. So my question is, what is the state doing towards putting funding dollars in widening 301? I don't see where the state is doing that. As a matter of fact, the dollars, the widening that we will see on 301 will actually be as a result of the developers and not the state. Is that correct?
That's correct. There is no state project to do anything on that section of 301.
So when we have the remaining priority recommendations from the list of last year, and we're adding these again to this year, when we talk about on page 2, items 1, 2, 3, and 4, and even going on down to page 3, looking at some of the items all the way down to 9, when we're looking at the state, I think we need to have some lobbyists work with us on that endeavor, because I don't see where the state is putting in any money. What I'm hearing, at least I think this is what I'm hearing, is the state is saying they don't have any money, so they can't do that. It can't be moved from design to engineering because of lack of money. And yet and still, when we look at Route 301 as it is when you come under 50 and it turns into 301 right by Gateway Center, you really do not have the land, the lanes there. I really don't think you're going to be able to get 3 lanes out of 2 lanes by just restriping it. I'm trying to figure out how you're going to do that, because you have tractor trailers coming down there also. So how big are the lanes going to be?
I don't have an answer to that, sir.
Can we get an answer to that?
District 3 is working on the plan, as I said. They did try a few years ago to look at an actual major shift in the roadway using some of the median area and creating room for another lane, and it was a very costly project. That's what took them a couple of years to get back to us on. It just would not work and be cost effective for them. I believe the shoulder of the road on the gateway side is a load-bearing shoulder. It can carry traffic, and so it's suitable for being striped as a through lane, and I think that's the most cost-effective thing that District 3 can do. And that's just my understanding, that they're trying to address the city's need in that area, and that's the most that they think that they can do.
Now let's look at cost-effective and safety. Is the most cost-effective means of doing it, is that the safest way of doing it? Do we have any safety data on that?
We're going to have someone from District 3 come in and describe the project to you.
Yes, we are. I think we need to have someone from District 3 come in and explain what they're trying to do on 301, or what can we expect from 301. I mean, because I've seen major thoroughfares re-engineered and reconstructed so that those thoroughfares could be more they're accessible by the resident there. I'm just going to give you a couple of them. Route 5 used to be that same way, going down from Allentown Road, going towards Brandywine. It used to be the exact same way. They reconfigured that and re-engineered it. The same thing occurred up in Route 32. The same thing occurred on Route 29. And when you look at 3, and I made a special effort to look at 3 when I was coming from the airport on Sunday, and I looked at 3 and then compared it to 301. And 3, what I'm looking at, that's in Arundel County. I'm seeing that the streets in Arundel County on 3, they're wider than the streets in Prince George's County, or the street in or 301 in Prince George's County is not as wide as when you look at that same road when you cross the county lines. When you cross 450 and get into Anne Arundel County, when you're going northbound, you automatically see that 3 is opening up. So I'm just wondering, what is it that Anne Arundel County is getting that Prince George's County cannot get? I mean, this is something that anyone that has eyesight can visually see. So can we get somebody in here from District 3 so that we can address some of these priorities? Because it seems to me like what we're doing is, all we're doing is giving them the same priority list year in year, but nevertheless, we aren't getting any response, getting any action. So if you keep doing the same thing and you're getting no response, you got to change your game plan, because doing the same thing over and over and not getting any response is going to yield the same results, and the results have been bad. So can we get that on the agenda to get somebody in here from District 3 to go over these priorities that we're talking about, the ones that we're looking at from not just from the state, and then maybe later on have someone come in from the county, but definitely we need to get somebody in from the state to address the issues on 301, because 301 is just terrible. And all the improvements that are coming on 301, I happen to know, are coming from developers. They're not coming from the state. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Sankar?
Yes, thank you for your comprehensive report. The first area would be Mitchellville and Excalibur Road. So the intersection is fully signalized with left turns north and southbound on Mitchellville. However, there have been many accidents. I've heard from residents all the accidents that occur at that intersection, and it may be time for us to take a look at adding left turn signals east and westbound at Excalibur. Another would be Mount Oak Road and Notting Hill Drive. It's a 3-way intersection. During peak hours from residents, it's difficult to make any turn from that road. And I think the time may be now to see if it warrants a full traffic signal. And Notting Hill. And then of course, just to echo the sentiments about Church Road, to keep that emphasized. And the last is for the city, but it's Northview. We've had some conversations about enhancements to Northview Drive along Allen Pond Park. There are several crosswalks that are not sufficient, that aren't marked. One crosswalk doesn't even have a marking on the road. I know that we were looking into making improvements there. If you can provide any updates on that project?
Sir, you're talking about Northview Drive itself?
Yes, along Northview Drive at Allen Pond Park.
Public Works is working on a project. I don't know if Mr. Stefanos is here.
Yeah, we are looking at that crosswalk. There are 2 crossings there, one marked crossing and one unmarked crossing. We have a preliminary design that's under review right now. I expect and it makes some substantial changes to improve the safety of that crosswalk. We just haven't gotten it through city staff yet to approve the modification, but it would involve different striping, moving the crosswalk, but I think it'll substantially improve the safety of that crosswalk.
Okay. And this letter that we mentioned, I believe it was sent last September?
Yes, the priority letters, we typically will have our meeting like we're having this evening, and then we'll put the letters on your consent agenda for council to authorize the letters to be sent. So that would happen in September.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, staff? Okay. Would you have a request for adoption of the city transportation list? Want to make a motion?
So moved.
Second by Dr. Sankar. Any questions on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. And as a follow-up before that, hearing no objection, we'll get letters off to District 3 and to the Secretary of Transportation requesting presentations at the earliest possible. I'll try to get them out this week. All right, item next is always stop warrants.
Good evening, Council. My name is George Stefanos, the city's Public Works Director. I'm here to respond to 2 questions about the city's 1992 policy concerning installation of multi-way stop signs. Before I get into that, I would like to comment on the two intersections mentioned by Mr. Murtaugh earlier this evening. Bel Air and Ken Hill, he asked about the possibility of an all-way stop there. That actually has already been studied, and the findings were that an all-way stop was appropriate for that intersection. It has been permitted. It's part of the work that's being done by St. John's, and it's under permit right now. It would be complete sometime this calendar year. The other intersection he asked about was Stony Brook and Superior, which we were passed a question about that in early July. We will be studying that intersection against the policy that I'm going to talk about here in a minute. But certainly that both those intersections, one of them has already been studied and approved. The other we will study. So going back to the questions that were asked about the city's current multi-way stop policy, the two questions: one, it's an age policy, is it still relevant and appropriate? And two, should all-way stop signs be used as a traffic calming measure? And before I answer each of these questions, I'd like to draw your attention to the slides on the screen, which were provided by our traffic consultant, Sabra and Associates. And these slides provide a list of advantages and disadvantages of all-way stop signs. So here's a list of advantages. They help drivers and pedestrians at an intersection decide who has the right-of-way. They can assist pedestrians and bicyclists crossing by stopping one or more approaches of traffic. They can mitigate left turn and right turn angle crashes. It's inexpensive to install compared to roundabouts or traffic signals. And it can provide interim control of an intersection that is in need of a traffic signal. This is a list of disadvantages. Unwarranted stop signs encourage disobedience and the use of alternate inadequate routes, increasing neighborhood cut-through volumes and disrupting traffic flow. Unwarranted stop signs make drivers stop more frequently, often resulting in drivers driving faster between intersections. They add unnecessary delay to motorists at unwarranted stop-controlled intersections, and so intersections therefore lose effectiveness. And higher crash rates for left-turning vehicles than traffic signals or roundabouts. If a signal was warranted, a signal should be used. Going on. The last bullet there was that stop signs do not lower roadway speeds and are not traffic calming devices. And a couple more. Drivers tend to ignore unwarranted stop signs if they are frequently required to stop when driving along a roadway. Frequent stops increase vehicle operating costs. Frequent unwarranted stops increase vehicle fuel consumption and general wear and tear on a vehicle. Frequent stopping also increases exhaust fumes and associated hydrocarbons and increased noise pollution. So these advantages and disadvantages highlight the need to have a process to determine whether or not all-way stops are warranted. So that's part of the response to the first question: is the city's policy still relevant and appropriate? A policy to determine whether an all-way stop is warranted is very important, since there are many disadvantages, including negative impacts on traffic safety when unwarranted stop signs are installed. Now, since the city's policy is so old, we asked our consultant to evaluate it to be sure it's still appropriate. The city's policy requires that either one of two sets of criteria are met. The first set of criteria is actually the criteria provided by Federal Highways in the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices for Streets and Highways. That manual's acronym is MUTCD, is the term you'll hear people use. The MUTCD has a set of criteria to determine if a multi-way stop is warranted. Generally, the criteria is based on the peak hour traffic volume at the intersection and the delay for the approaching minor street. The second set of criteria is what is known as supplemental criteria that the city adopted in 1992. And on the screen, you see the list of criteria. It includes sight distance, the presence of youth-oriented facilities, proximity of high pedestrian traffic volume generators, a history of speeding violations and accidents, and the volumes that are very similar to the MUTCD criteria. So the consultant compared the city's supplemental criteria against policy in several other jurisdictions. Their findings were the city's criteria is not unusual and still appropriate. They have made some recommendations for changes to the supplemental criteria to better quantify the analysis. As you can see, we assign points, but the criteria for assigning the points is not very well described. So that was their recommendations, was to make those more clear. We will evaluate the recommended changes, but at this time, no changes to the city policy is being proposed. So that's the answer. You know, is the city's policy relevant, appropriate? My answer to that question is it is relevant. It's very important to have such a policy, and the policy itself is appropriate. The second question concerned the use of all-way stops for traffic calming. And the city's neighborhood traffic management program includes a list of traffic calming measures. That list does not include all-way stops. As already discussed, the use of all-way stops for traffic calming is discouraged due to their ineffectiveness as a calming measure, and since unwarranted stop signs have many negative impacts. So that's the answer to the second question. Is it's not a good tool for traffic calming. They're highly recommended not to be used as traffic calming. So staff is not seeking any action from council this evening. This report is being provided to respond to the 2 questions asked. I'm happy to respond to any other questions.
Okay. Questions of staff? Mr. Seth?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for your report tonight, Mr. Stefanos. I appreciate your comments about Kent Hill and Bel Air and Stony Brook and Superior, so it sounds like we can count on St. John's taking some action this calendar year on Bel Air and Kent Hill. Is that specifically a 4-way stop they're putting in, or what are they doing? Do we know?
That's correct. 3-way stop at Kent Hill and Bel Air, and a second 3-way stop. A second 3-way stop at Stony Brook and Bel Air.
Gotcha. Okay. So it looks like we have potentially 2 down. So there we go. You know, one of my broad concerns is, you know, when I talk to the police department, you know, and when I talk to my colleagues, you know, the police department and we hear, you know, constant complaints about speeding all over the city. And, you know, with 190 miles of road surface and, you know, only 65 police officers who have things like days off and days in court and stuff, there's only so much road surface that we can cover with police, you know. And, you know, we play these, you know, this whack-a-mole game where we'll send police out to write tickets for a week, people slow down for 2 weeks, and then they speed right back up after 2 weeks. And, you know, my broad concern is that, you know, we need to try and find ways to think outside the box to tackle some of these, you know, perennial complaints about speeding. You know, in Old Bowie is an area where we have a lot of challenges. We have cars that really fly by on 564 or 11th Main Street, and Chestnut Road. You know, talking to our police chief, we've had a number of accidents at that bridge on Chestnut. People come down there, and if there's even a little bit of rain, they'll slide right into that brick wall. Currently, it's not even being rebuilt because they're constantly having to fix that thing. So we got to do something, you know, to address this. And in parts of town like Old Bowie, you're dealing with, you know, 3 layers of government in places: the state, the county, and the city. And, you know, in 3 years of navigating that bureaucracy, I feel like I've aged about 30 years. So, you know, I appreciate what staff is saying. You know, my ask is that we try and put our heads together and come up with some, you know, more creative solutions. I recognize the MUTCB as a thing. I tend to view the MUTCB as having its, you know, purpose and its place, but more often than not, it's red tape that doesn't necessarily take into account the particulars of a, you know, unique intersection or location. And I really hope that we can kind of work together to identify specific places where we can come up with more creative traffic calming. A specific question, we had a conversation not long ago about potential traffic calming, a speed hump in the T section, where a group of residents had gotten petitions signed, but they fell just short of the threshold necessary to get a speed hump on a particular street they were looking at doing. We as a council said that we would be interested in revisiting our current requirements for that and maybe lower the threshold of required signatures a little bit. Have we since discussed that at all, or is that something that we need to start talking about again?
You know, I really had hoped to have that information for this meeting tonight, but we are working on it. We actually have that same consultant, Sabra, as assisting us with, you know, answering that question. Should we make some adjustments to the traffic calming policy so that it's not so difficult to qualify, if you will, for some measures. So it's a work in progress. I owe you a response to that still.
All right, I appreciate that, Mr. Stefanos. Because one of the things, you know, there's a new guy who's at the head of State Highway right now, and his approach I kind of appreciate, which is essentially he tends to say yes whenever people have specific requests, and if there's blowback to those requests, then he directs people towards the people who made the ask, typically the politicians who made the ask. And, you know, I'm kind of at the stage where I feel like as a city, we might want to consider adopting somewhat of a similar approach, where we spend less time worrying about blowback to potential changes in traffic. And if you get any complaints, you can send them to me, you can send them to my colleagues and we can work those out. Because I feel like I'm getting the same questions for years and years and kind of being met with the same answers whenever I take it up the chain. And I'm getting a little bit tired of that. And it's not your fault. It's just the reality of, you know, state, county rules and things like that.
Yeah, I think, you know, in terms of the traffic calming policy, I think really what I need to present to you is a couple alternatives, because that's exactly the kind of discussions we've had with our consultant, is that some jurisdictions, they do not, for example, you know, our policy requires that there's a demonstrated support from the community at 60% of the people that live on the street. Our consultant has advised that, you know, a lot of jurisdictions don't have those sorts of rules, that the decision is made either at Public Works or Council. So I think, you know, there's pros and cons to that. You know, we certainly don't want to throw humps in where it's opposed, you know, and,
sure.
And that's the risk that you run. So, you know, I hear what you're saying. Those are the same exact conversations that we're having internally and with our consultant, and I hope to get back to you with some recommendations in the near future.
I appreciate that. You remain my favorite Public Works Director in the city, George.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Wolf. Thank you, sir. I appreciate the time spent on this, and I want to thank you also for the good work you and your staff have done so far on a number of installations for speed humps. I think everyone is keenly aware that there is a growing frustration with traffic, whether it's the safety concerns or the volumes, and I know that your offices have been doing good work trying to mitigate some of that for our neighborhood streets. So thank you for that. I'm very much looking forward to hearing what you have on a proposal for a new approach. And I'll just say the same thing that I've said before, which is, you know, we are the form of government closest to the people, and I think we have an obligation to be the most responsive. They come to us with an expectation that we can do something. And a lot of times, some of these bigger policy, you know, state and county and whatnot don't take into account the local needs and how things are changing in the community. So the more we can do to establish a policy that allows for greater control and greater meeting of the needs of the community, I greatly appreciate that. So look forward to hearing what you have on that. I understand the commentary on the stop signs. I'll say this though: some of the negative stop signs, some of the things that are listed as negatives on the stop sign list are actually the intended consequence in this case, because it causes people to stop. It actually, I think one of the negatives was it directs people to other routes that might be cut-throughs. Well, in this case, the hope would be that they would go right back to the proper road instead of the cut-through road. So I do think that there's, you know, some conflict there. But I would like to ask you a question. What other things could we do to make it easier to put in stop signs that would be consistent with safety requirements and the applicable standards? Is there anything else that we can add to our policy that would make it
easier for us as a council to address the needs of constituents, particularly those who are concerned about being able to cross streets in bicycles and all that kind of thing, recognizing it may not be a intended consequence for stop signs to be traffic calming, but I think it's clear that they do have that, even if that's not their purpose.
So the recommendations that we use, or the guidance that we use from that's adopted by Maryland, the MUTCD is adopted by Maryland. This is, I'm not a traffic engineer. We don't have a staff of traffic engineers. So we use those, guidance documents because they are recognized as those, the guidance is recognized to ensure safe actions. It's quick, you can do a quick Google search on the use of stop signs for traffic calming, and you will get study after study done by various states that draw the same conclusion, that there's safety issues because unwarranted stop signs, one of the things that happens is people start to ignore them. Well, if one person ignores them, the other person is expecting that vehicle to stop, you can see the conflict right away. So I think, my recommendation is that we continue to use the MUTCD for both always stop warrants and for stop signs. We don't have a lot of requests for just stop signs, but the always stop has come up recently, specifically on Maple Avenue, I think, because of of the thought that it might be a useful traffic calming practice. But I don't know that we've had a lot of, hey, we need a stop sign, other than for traffic calming requests. But even so, I think the guidance that's in the MUTCD is the right guidance for us to continue to follow.
So, but we have already established some additional things to consider. Are there any other things that we could add to that list?
In the consultant's report, they did have a couple other, items that are considered by jurisdictions. I think most of them. For example, pedestrian and bike volumes. Mm-hmm. So, recognize that our city, the city managed streets, tend to not. We could add that, but you tend to. I can't think of a city managed street where you send a counter out there for mm-hmm. pedestrian and bike volumes. And you go, wow, there's just not, on the city maintained streets. So I think, jurisdictions that have that, probably have a higher pedestrian and bike, traffic population. The other things, the MUTCD has additional criteria as well. So I think it's, other than that, I'm not sure that there are other things that are considered for,
In those criteria, we have traffic operations. What does that entail?
I'm not sure what that one was. I would have to get back to you on that.
Okay. And then there's also another category of other specifications. I guess that falls in the category of miscellaneous.
Right.
Is there any insights as to that?
No, I don't have that.
Okay. Could you kind of research that for me and shoot me a note on what that might be?
Yes, I can.
And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Phelps.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Stefanos, thank you for the update on the always stop warrants. Let me ask you a question, and this is specific to Councilman Steve over in District 1. I know he had mentioned speed monitors, the humps or bumps. I think he mentioned humps, not bumps. But have we tried the speed monitors, the flashing lights over there in that area? And here's the reason why I'm asking that. We, several years ago, got some additional speed monitors. And one of the reasons why we did that is that we came to the conclusion many, many years ago that a lot of people were speeding and that they did not actually know how fast they were going. And with those flashing monitors, it really flashes and it hones in on, for example, most of them, when you go over, if you go over 25 miles an hour, it clocks your speed and it also flashes. And that was a good deterrent to at least notify people that they were speeding. And it really helps for those people who do not intend to speed but just didn't know that they were speeding. So I would like to know, have we used those, or are we planning on using those over in that particular area? And do we have enough? Because I know we bought some of the first ones were trailers. And then we bought, I think it was 4 or 6 others that you hang on poles and whatnot, which are easy because the trailers, you know, it's a little more difficult to move those around. But I'd like to get some feedback on, are we utilizing those speed monitors over in that area?
We have 6 of the
Right.
pole-mounted signs that you're
Right.
talking about. They are in use all the time. What we do is we rotate them once a quarter through the year. So it's in a particular place for 3 months. They get rotated around. Each quarter, the street superintendent discusses, you know, where should we put the signs. I don't know if there are any in the area of Maple Avenue right now, but I just made a note to myself to make sure that in our next rotation we put one on Maple Avenue.
And here again, if that's the rotation and there's more of a problem in that section than it is, say, on Devonside Drive, maybe we may want to go to that section over there and increase the frequency of the rotation over there and decrease the frequency in some other areas where you don't have the problem as much as they do over in District 1.
Right, that's exactly the process. You know, when the street superintendent discusses, you know, where should we put them this next period, he usually has a recommendation kind of just based on geographically moving around the city. And then myself and one of the other staff members provides input exactly what you're talking about. Is where have we heard of concerns or problems? And then we'll usually make that a higher priority. In some cases, we've even put 2 signs on one street, you know, just because we knew it was a high priority issue. So
that's not a problem, putting two of them there. Also, in riding through my district and some of the other districts in the city, one traffic calming mechanism I have yet to see in the city, and I'd like to know why we don't have it there, and that are chokers. I know Councilman Wolfley asked about, are there other mechanisms for traffic calming? And chokers are one of the other mechanisms. I don't see them in this particular city. I do see that there are chokers on Lake Arbor Way, and there's chokers on some other areas which are in close proximity to the city of Bowie, but granted, I may not have gone through all of the streets, so we may have 1 or 2 that I'm not aware of, but I just, from a visualization, I don't see that we're utilizing that particular device as much as we possibly could. Is any reason for that?
So that not exactly a choker, but down in the lower part of Jennings Mill, we choked the road.
Yes, you did. You're exactly right. That's exactly right.
And one of the reasons we could do that there is because the area where we did, there were no driveways. The street was wider, and there were no driveways. So a lot of the projects that we've done have been in sections where there's, you know, driveway every 80 feet. And so, you know, you just can't put a choker in there and nobody can park on the street. You know, it just takes up all the space. So a lot of the streets, you know, when we determine that a street qualifies for calming measure, we don't determine it qualifies for humps. We determine it qualifies for a calming measure. Then we examine that list of stuff that's in the policy to figure out which one will work. And it just so happens that, you know, the humps work very well where you got driveways. So, you know, they're really the only thing that can fit when you have a lot of driveways.
Right, because I was just wondering, is there any reason why we're not utilizing that? I do see it in other communities. Also, speaking of chokers, there's another traffic mechanism that we've used in District 4, and that is on Penn Oak Parkway. Here again, the street was wide, and people are actually passing each other on Penn Oak Parkway when it's supposed to be a single-lane street in each direction. So what we did was we striped the outside lanes, or the inside lanes, if you will, so that it would shrink, give the appearance that the street is shorter, is not as wide as it once was, which also slowed people down in that particular area on Penn Oak Parkway. Can we utilize that type of a resource over in District 1? Is that something that, for example, around Bel Air Drive?
Bel Air has this, has those side stripes on it already.
Okay. Are there any other areas in District 1 that the council member was referring to that we have not done this, but maybe we want to look at it?
Well, you know, when we always look at that, so that's always on our list, and because that's actually, you know, that's actually a level 1 measure in our policy. So
right.
we always, when street qualifies, that's something we always look at.
Plus, it's the least inexpensive thing to do. With regard to your conversation, the dialogue you had with Councilman Estier and also Councilman Wolfley about the updates, could you give us a date or some range as to when you'll be able to get back with the council with regard to the updates that you are to give to Councilman Estier and also Councilman Wolfley?
I would expect we'll have something this calendar year.
Not before November?
It might be before November. It's not done yet, so I'm a little bit worried about committing to a date at this point in time.
All right, thank you very much.
Mr. Wolfley?
Thank you, and apologize. I have one go back where I forgot to make a quick question. The Tulip Grove area, Tulip Grove Drive, there have been some discussions about a speed camera. Have we heard anything more about the status of that as a possible remedy for some of the problems there?
We have. Actually, last week, Chief Neske let me know that it does not meet the criteria for the speed camera. Mm-hmm. So we're still, we're working on Tulip Grove Drive. Now that I was kind of hoping that would solve all the problems, and now it's back on my plate. So
only tongue in cheek. Would it be suitable for a stop sign?
We're doing a warrant study at Tulip and Bel Air.
Right.
And I'm not sure if that's complete yet or not.
Yeah. No. This is what is that? Trainer with the school.
You're talking about where the school is, right?
Yeah, that's the bigger concern I have there is pedestrian.
I can assure you that the current, even without doing the counts, the current criteria, it would not meet the warrants for the three-way stop there.
Okay. So how about for just a crosswalk?
A crosswalk across Tulip Grove?
The concern I have is, obviously, we have a school right there,
right.
And we have Tulip Grove, which has an inordinate number of speeders for such a short, relatively short road. And there are a lot of kids coming and going, and there's bus traffic and the like. And we've had recently, as I think you're aware, we had an accident there where a car ended up in someone's front yard. Purportedly because the brakes didn't work, but I suspect it was more tied to some distracted driving. But I'm concerned about the general safety and the speed in that area in particular because of that school. So if you could redouble efforts given the most recent news here on the speed camera if you could redouble efforts to see what other alternatives we have at our disposal to help make that a safer place to have a school and slow down traffic.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. Just one last observation. I know from your, the professional traffic management perspective, there are all these warrants and whatever, and I think we all understand the engineering bias is that the priority road or the larger road has right of way, and they don't recognize the challenges for cross-streeting. And I think that's what leads to the question about the additional stop signs, so that some of the cross-traffic on some of the larger streets can occasionally get through the intersection in a more safe thing. So as you go forward with this, maybe you can look at that, what I would call engineering bias, and see if there's some way that we can reconcile. I mean, because the questions you were hearing tonight is, and I know I drive down Kent Hill a lot, and sometimes it takes a little while before you can make a turn on the Bel Air Drive. I know there's a natural reluctance to do these things, but there may be reasonable exceptions. And to follow up on Dr. Trout, is that the sooner you can get some kind of a solid recommendation back to council, the better. Okay, anything else? All right, that's it. Last item is you wanted to have a question about the introduction of ordinance 0619.
Yeah, if someone wants to bring it up to a vote, I just thought it belonged on a vote, not consent agenda was all.
Okay, so you are? All right, so does somebody want to make a motion to introduce?
Excuse me, Mayor, this is not for a vote tonight. It was just an introduction. The public hearing and the vote won't take place till the September 3rd meeting.
Yeah, but what I need is I need somebody to approve the introduction.
Right.
Okay, so a motion? So moved. Is there a second? Second. Moved and second by Dr. Trout. Any question on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? 4-2. Okay, Dr. Trout.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor and Council, I'd like to move to adjournment, but to move to go to a closed session. Statutory authority to close session general provisions, Article 3-305, subsections B7, to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice on a legal matter.
Second, Dr. Any question on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Before we go, just for the people that are left here, tomorrow night from 6 to 8, Allen Pond. Those of you that have questions about traffic or whatever, the police will be there. It's National Night Out. The weather's supposed to be pretty reasonable. The police department are very reasonable people, so if you have an update, it's a fun evening. So come out and show some support for Bowie PD. And I'm sure there's vendors there and food and all that stuff available. It's a nice evening.
Mr. Mayor, can I make a special request, if possible? I think we should have done this earlier, but in light of the carnage, the devastation that has occurred in two of our American cities in the United States of America, I think we need to have a moment of silence for the number of people that have lost their lives.
Yeah, you're right. We should have done that. I tell you, before we close the meeting, if everybody could stand for a moment, we'll have a moment of silence for the lost lives in El Paso and in Dayton, Ohio. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Trout. Is there a vote on the move to executive session? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Good night, folks. See you tomorrow night.